I'm going to take you through our solar PV and Tesla Powerwall performance stats and costs for the year of 2019. So let's start right now. Hi, John here. If this is your first time here and you want to learn more about my Tesla Powerwall 2 and solar PV installations, our Tesla Model 3 Performance or Hyundai Kona, then start now by subscribing. It's free. Plus, click the old bell notification icon so you don't miss any new content. In this video, I'm going to cover the previous 12 months' performance of our solar PV and Tesla Powerwall 2 installation. On the 4th of December 2019 was the first anniversary of our Powerwall 2 installation. And this video delves into the stats, the costs, the payback during those first 12 months. Well, actually, it's sort of covering from the 1st of January to the 31st of December inclusive, but you get the idea. If you're new here and not familiar with our setup, let's give you a little bit of background about it. We're based in the UK, in the East Midlands. We have two separate solar PV arrays. We have a 4 kilowatt array with a 3.8 kilowatt SMA inverter, which was installed in September 2011. We also have a 2.34 kilowatt array with a 2.2 kilowatt solar inverter. That was installed in October of 2019. And that gives us a total array of 6.34 on the roof and a potential 6 kilowatt at the inverter when they're both on sort of max. Our array is not shadowed or shaded. It faces southwest at a 225 azimuth. We have a Tesla Powerwall 2 of a Gateway 1, as I mentioned previously. That was installed on the 4th of December 2018. The Powerwall is set on time-based control, cost saving, and has our 4-hour cheap rate tariff plugged into its configuration. We have a myenergi zappi version 1, which was installed on the 4th of December 2018. We actually have a replacement model installed at the beginning of December, but I'll talk more about that later. We have a myenergi eddi to divert excess solar to heat our hot water, and that was installed on the 22nd of July 2019. We have a myenergi hub installed in June 2019, which allows us to remotely monitor and control the myenergi devices via a smartphone app. It also allows us to download the latest firmware and also monitor the system status via the LED lights on the hub. We have two myenergi harvis. These devices have current transformer clamps wired into them, or CT clamps. The clamps measure the current flow, and each harvi can accommodate up to 3 CT clamps. On my setup, I've got 4 clamps. I've got one for the grid power, one for each of the solar arrays, and one for the Tesla Powerwall, hence the need to have 2 devices. So let's have a look at our annual generation of our solar PV. So for the whole of 2019, we generated 4,499 kilowatt hours from both systems. The new array added 180 kilowatts in the final 2 months of the year once it actually started generating. And as you'll see from the chart, even with that additional output from the second array, we still didn't beat our first full year in 2012. However, I'm sure 2020 we will beat that 2012 figure, so something to aim for. Wrong one. Powerwall, that one. So what happened to all that solar power we generated then? I guess that's a fairly obvious question. Looking at this pie chart, you can see the individual segments of our energy split. Our home usage, shown in the blue segment, is the electricity used by the home. And that was 8,825 kilowatts for 2019. and that works out to an average of about 24 kilowatts per day. I'm thinking that this is probably going to be slightly higher next year as a number of factors feed into that conclusion. For example, on the 1st of July, we got our Hyundai Kona electric vehicle, and on the 30th of September, we got our Tesla Model 3. So both vehicles we charge at home, and as often as we can, we'll charge them on excess solar, which obviously is free. However, at other times we charge them during the night on our cheap off-peak rate. And as we haven't had either of the vehicles for a full 12 months, their total annual electricity usage hasn't yet been factored into these annual figures. So that will certainly happen in 2020. We've also both retired at the end of September, so we are at home more and therefore more likely to consume additional electricity. We also have 3 glass electric kilns in the glass studio, which were additions in the sort of mid to late 2019. So I guess it's really going to be interesting to see how the additional solar PV array copes with the additional electricity usage, and if it offsets this additional usage. I guess we'll find out in the fullness of time. In terms of solar, we generated 4,449 kilowatt hours, which equates to 50% of our total home usage, and that's shown in the yellow segment there on the pie chart. The Tesla Powerwall, shown in green and sort of a pale lilac-y blue, probably more of a lilac. Anyway, concentrate on the green segment. That contributed 2,618 kilowatts to power our home. And if you add that to the solar generation, total generation is 7,067 kilowatt hours. And that equates to 83% of our total house usage figure. We were self-powered by solar and the Tesla Powerwall for 83% of the year, which actually is very impressive. I got to be a bit honest here because I haven't actually factored in the 488 kilowatts that we exported to the grid, and that's shown in that top thin wedge up there in orange. So if we take that into account and remove it from the total generated value, it works out that we were self-powered for 77% of the year. So it was 83. If we take off 6%, which was what we sent back to the grid, it brings us to 77%. From the 1st of January to the 14th of August, the Tesla Powerwall was set to self-power mode, meaning it targeted not pulling anything from the grid and would store any excess solar to power the house when the sun had gone down. Over this time frame, we were self-powered from the battery and or solar power from the roof, and we did self-power for 63% of that total time frame. In 2020, this percentage will hopefully be higher because we have more solar power to play with now. And then from the 15th of August to the 31st of December, we set the Powerwall to time-based control cost saving. In this mode, it functions to ensure that the house is self-powered during the 20-hour more expensive peak tariff period. And this gives you the cost saving, obviously, so you're not pulling the electricity when it's expensive. So the Powerwall would pull from the grid during the 4-hour cheap off-peak period. There's basically an algorithm in the Powerwall that decides whether to charge overnight or not, based on the historic usage patterns. It forecasts usage patterns and considers historic rolling solar activity and sort of end-of-day surplus if there is any. So even with this change to cost-saving mode and self-power being a secondary priority, we still managed to be self-powered for 57% of that time period when we were in cost-saving mode, which actually I'm really impressed with. So let's have a look at the annual generation income. Let's go back to that chart. There we go. So what income did we receive in 2019? We are on one of the best feed-in tariff schemes because we were early adopters of solar PV system back in September 2011, and we actually get a 54 pence, which actually is index linked as well, for each kilowatt that we generate from our solar array. This FIT payment covers only the original 4 kilowatt array. The new array gets no FIT payment at all. Oh, beg your pardon. As a FIT mechanism was abolished on the 31st of March 2019, which was before we had the second array fitted. So for the year 2019, we received £2,393 in FIT payments. Our FIT payments are guaranteed for 25 years, which means we have another 14 years of income from our panels. It's fair to say that the initial FIT payments were perhaps overly generous. However, being a new market sector, I guess it was fairly difficult to gauge the return on investment versus the likely take-up from home owners. Ofgem, who set the FIT tariff, dropped the FIT payments over the following years as the industry flourished, prices in solar panels dropped, and the take-up of solar PV installations increased tremendously. Our initial installation cost was £15,225 in September 2011. We broke even on our investment at the end of 2018, and this was a 7-year payback period. At the time we placed the order, it was estimated it would be a 10 to 14-year payback period. So we managed to do it in a lot shorter time, almost half the time. Our total FIT payment of £2,393 in 2019 is therefore all profit, which actually is really, really nice. And this covers our combined energy bill, or energy costs for electricity and gas, and gives us some spare. In 2019, our electricity costs for the year were £816, including the standing charge and VAT. I haven't tracked the gas usage and bills for a number of reasons, but I do know they will be less than our electricity, as we only use gas for central heating, and this means it runs for 4, maybe 5 months of the year, and we also have a low unit rate of 3 pence per kilowatt unit, plus a lower standing charge than electricity of 17 pence per day. So I know it will be cheaper than what we've just paid for our electricity. So if I link back to our 77% self-powered we looked at earlier, let's consider what it would have cost if we had no Tesla Powerwall or solar panel array. How much would it have cost us for our total home electricity usage? To calculate this figure, I've ignored the daily standing charge, as we would have had to pay this regardless. I've also taken an average daily rate, as we moved from a 17 pence unit rate to a 13 pence unit rate when we changed suppliers in July. Plus, we have a 5 pence rate for 4 hours each day, but this didn't cover the whole year, as I say, as we swapped suppliers to Octopus Energy. So it's a little bit messy to try and calculate exactly. So what I've done is taken a median of those rates, which works out at 13 pence. So 13 pence times 8,825 kilowatts, which was our total house usage, works out at £1,147.25. Take away what we actually paid, sort of less VAT and the standing charge. So it's £1,147.25 minus £576, what we actually paid, leaves £571.25. So that's what it would have cost us if we didn't have solar or our Powerwall. We would have paid the same again or thereabouts, I guess, is really the long and short of it, if we didn't have solar or the Tesla Powerwall too. And I'm hoping it's actually going to be easier to calculate this figure more accurately in 2020, as the baseline should be a little bit more static, e.g. no new electric cars, No new solar PV arrays, no new Powerwalls, etc., etc. So we shall see. So let's have a look at the Powerwall efficiency. Taking the amount of electricity pushed into the Powerwall versus what we were able to extract over the year, we ended up with an overall efficiency of 90%. The Powerwall was basically 90% efficient, e.g. we managed to lose 10% in the conversion of putting it in and taking it out. Tesla rate the Powerwall 2 with a 92.5% round trip efficiency, which I suspect is probably worked on ideal conditions, i.e. the Tesla Powerwall in an inside location, which has a more stable temperature environment. Whereas because ours is outside, I suspect that probably impacts the efficiency slightly. As on really cold days, when the battery is cold, it will have to heat the battery to prevent damage, to prevent it from freezing. Plus it'll have to preheat to ensure it improves the charging rates when it starts to take solar in or charges from the grid during the night. 2019 wasn't all plain sailing during the year. In early November, our Zappi car charger died and it had a hardware fault. myenergi were actually really good about it and confirmed that it needed to be replaced. It was still under warranty, being just under 12 months old. And they sent out a new one and arranged for collection of the old one once the new one had been installed. However, this turnaround meant we were without a Zappi car charger for about 3 or 4 weeks. And this had a knock-on effect on our charging regime. We had to charge both cars off the granny plug chargers, which are connected to a 13 amp 3-pin plug. And this meant that we weren't able to divert any excess solar from the into the Zappi in to charge the cars. And we couldn't make really effective use of that 4-hour off-peak cheap rate period to charge the cars because they were on effectively a trickle charge rate. So last sort of 4 weeks or so was not great from the charging perspective. We also found that our gas smart meter has stopped recording usage, and I'm going to do a separate video on this. But it delivers gas okay, so we're still getting gas, but it doesn't actually record what we're using. So in effect, it's free gas, which obviously is ideal, but not really very honest. So I've reported it to Octopus Energy, and they're coming out to fit a new meter. The initial smart meter was fitted on the 19th of July by our previous energy supplier, and it worked fine. And in December, the 5th of December, I noticed that it didn't seem to be moving, so I gave a manual reading through to Octopus Energy via their website. And then as I was pulling the stats together for this video, I thought, I'll go and see what the gas reading is now. And it was the same as the one I gave at the beginning of December. So obviously, although we're using gas, because we've got the central heating on, it's not actually recording on the in-house display or on the actual meter itself, because I went out there to check that. And Octopus Energy checked from their end and they couldn't get a reading either. So they're coming out to replace that. So happy days. So what's changed also in our setup? Over the years, a few things that have changed. We've obviously installed quite a few of the myenergi products. The eddi for heating our hot water from Surplus Solar. In addition to making it easier to monitor things, we added the myenergi hub along with the harvi to deal with the additional CT clamps. So one on the electricity, one on the solar and one on the Tesla. Then no other changes happened until we put the second array in, and that was installed at the end of October. And then I was a little bit slow on the uptake really, because I didn't incorporate this new PV output into our myenergi setup. And it wasn't until the end of December that I had an epiphany to think, I need to do this. And I installed a second harvi device with a CT clamp on it onto the new solar array. So now the zappi and the eddi could see the complete picture from both solar arrays rather than just seeing the 4 kilowatt array where they had been up until then. So before the additional harvi unit was fitted, it meant that the additional solar generated from the second array, the new array, wasn't being recognised by the zappi or the eddi, and they were still both working off the initial 4 kilowatt array. So I therefore found myself constantly monitoring solar production on sunny days. Not that we had many sunny days. And I manually was diverting any excess solar to the cars or to the eddi to heat the hot water. This manual switching, apart from being rather tedious, wasn't ideal because it wasn't particularly efficient, because neither the eddi nor the zappi saw the total solar generation amount. And this resulted in, more often than not, pulling from the grid or discharging the Powerwall to plug the gap when there was insufficient solar being generated. And let me give you an example of that. I would see on the app that, on the Tesla app, that we were exporting to the grid with excess solar. So I would manually boost the eddi, which meant I would put it on maximum boost, which was 3 kilowatt. But if the excess solar wasn't sufficient to fulfill this demand, it would then discharge the remainder from the battery or pull from the grid if the battery was depleted. It was the same with the zappi as well. So when it was set to Eco++ setting, which is designed to charge from solar only, from excess solar, it wouldn't work as there was no excess solar from the 4K array, or not enough to automatically trigger it to start trickle charging. However, with the second array also generating, we would often be exporting to the grid. So I would put the zappi into Eco+ mode, where it would charge at 1.4 kilowatts an hour. But again, if we were only exporting, say, 1 kilowatt to the grid, the remainder would be pulled from the Powerwall or from the grid. So manually switching is certainly not efficient due to its all or nothing approach. However, I guess it was better than not making use of any of the exported energy. Thankfully, the equipment downtime all happened during the relatively poorer solar months of November and early December, which meant not too much excess solar was lost back to the grid. So if you have any questions or observations, then drop them down in the comments below. Things that I may have overlooked or not considered, or things you want to know about. And also, how was your 2019? How did that work for you? So I'm interested to know, so do tell. Finally, thanks for watching and supporting these videos with likes and comments, and I will see you on the next one. All right, take care. Bye.